Hello, it's June the 20th. Welcome to Renew Every Morning. I'm Paul Anderson-Walsh, and today we're continuing with our vignette series. And I want to think about Peter today. And my thought and my title, I guess, for this little vignette is Peter, the intercessor who failed forward. Well, I like that. There's a big thing they talk about in the business community where they call fail fast. But I think this one is about fail fast, maybe, but also fail forward. The verse I'm thinking about is in Luke 22. It comes in as Jesus is talking to Peter when Peter is being kind of restored. And there's an awful lot of backstory to this. But the pretext is that Jesus says to Peter, Satan has asked to sift you. Good Lord. Can you imagine that the Lord acquiesces to that? Satan has asked to sift you. Jesus could have said, no. We're not doing that. But it's the same thing as Job. Do you remember that? It's just incredible. And you go, why? Well, because it's like with the story of Joseph. What the enemy intends for evil, God means for good. So watch now. Satan has asked to sift you, but I have prayed for you. Now watch that. That is a most extraordinary thing. Can you imagine that Jesus Christ, the Logos, the founder, one through whom all things sustain, pertain, were made for, made through, made by, and held together in, prayed for you? Now that's covering. Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, when you've repented, when you've come back, strengthen your brothers. Now, a couple of quick things to say on this before I jump into it. But I think it's interesting that he calls him Simon. There are three names that Jesus refers to Peter as, and it's actually Paul introduced another one, which is quite interesting. In fact, Paul uses it rather scalingly. But he calls him Simon. Your name is Simon, but you shall be Peter. Now, there's a long way between Simon and Peter. And I think Simon is his name under the law. Simon speaks about his self-effort. Simon Peter seems to me to be the liminal man, the man in transition, and Peter seems to be as settled as it gets. And that's why when Paul rebukes him, writes in Galatians, he says, when Cephas, which is Simon in his Jewish name, came to Antioch, I confronted him to his face. But now he's in a learning mode. So watch, I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. Now remember that's important. It's never going to be Simon's faith in God or Simon's faith in Simon's faith. It's God's faith in Simon exercising itself in God. That's important. It won't fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Now, Peter doesn't learn the big lessons of life in a classroom. He learns them in a courtyard, in a humbling. He learns them on the waves. He learns them at a fire. And he ultimately learns them in his failure. That is how you learn love on the job. He was the first to leap out of the boat. He was the first to call Jesus the Christ. He was the first to swear that he'd never fall away. But when the pressure came and really ratcheted it up on him, he denied him not once, not twice, but 3 times. And he is hysterical the 3rd time he denies Christ. And yet, Jesus has already seen it coming and already covered it in prayer. I prayed for you. I just wonder whether that prayer was a prayer that was prayed at the foundation of time. I wonder. Anyway, Peter's story is a reminder to me that love doesn't shield us from failure. It just restores us through it. That's the point. It uses it to restore us. There's a restoration fire. After the resurrection, Jesus doesn't shame Peter. He doesn't do that. He doesn't revisit the denials. He doesn't say, well, you said you were going to be my guy and look at you on the first chance you denied me. No, he cooks breakfast. He asks him one question, but he asks it 3 times. Simon, do you love me? Not do you regret it? Not will you promise not to do it again? Just do you love me? And each response he comes back, he says, feed my sheep. And by the way, I do wonder whether there's supposed to be an intensification there in the Greek. Simon, do you eros me? Well, more than, yes, Lord, you know I do. Simon Peter, do you phileo me? Peter, do you agape me? And I wonder if there's a build, an intensification, an inward journey that takes us there. But anyway, he says, look, feed my sheep. Now, this shift is a shift from self-confidence to God-dependence. Peter had to be emptied of everything. My foster mother always used to say to me, empty vessels make the most sound. I don't agree with that. I think empty vessels make room for other people to make their sound. And Peter was hollowed out, and he had become now a vessel of compassion, a vessel of understanding, a vessel of insight. And he moved from being a loud, noisy follower to being a quiet intercessor, one who would later strengthen others from the inside out. And it's very powerful. And this was his kind of super consciousness shift when we stop trying to serve God to prove ourselves and start loving others just to express ourselves. It's a very different idea. But Peter failed forward. That was his thing. And that's what he learned, and how he learned love on the job, I guess, if we're going to use that phrase. Not in perfection, but in restoration. And he moves from confidence in himself to having confidence in Christ, to becoming a confidant of Christ and trusted to tend, to guide, and to lead the flock. And Peter's boldness wasn't the mark of maturity. It was the mark of brokenness. It wasn't his undoing. It was, how should I say? No, it was his undoing. That's the point, I guess. It was his undoing that made him usable. He wasn't serviceable and usable before he was undone. That was the point. There was too much of him, too much noise. And so today's renewing thought for us is very simple. It's failure doesn't cancel our calling. It shapes our compassion. That's the thing. God doesn't need perfect followers. Never had done. Never asked for perfect followers. He entrusts the work to those who have been restored, because restored people restore others. Just as hurt people, restored people, restored people. That's the simple truth of it. So when you fall forward, learn, love on the job, and may you be renewed. Well, look, I hope you've been encouraged by this little vignette today. And if you have, subscribe, follow, share, do all that good stuff. But whatever you do, come back tomorrow. All right, bless you. Bye-bye.